Honestly, Gordon, it was pretty painful. It was hard to get back into the routine of work and school, which I hadn't done in quite a while. And I found out pretty quickly that my old way of doing things wasn't going to work for me at this age. So there was not really an opportunity to continue the procrastination and then cramming cycle that I developed earlier in life. So I had to find a more sustainable way of doing things, which has been great and honestly would have been beneficial for me a long time ago. But I'm glad that I found it now.
Welcome. This is Uncommon Sense, a CPA podcast presented by the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center. The center is an initiative of the CPA Education Foundation, the charitable arm of the Chartered Professional Accountant profession in Alberta. For the record, this CPA podcast isn't about bean counting. Our episodes feature conversations with Alberta CPAs sharing their insights on a wide range of timely topics. Hello, I'm Gordon Turtle, and our guest today is a very unique CPA, Cheryl Pereira. Recently, Cheryl has done what very, very few CPAs do. She has transformed her career from accounting-based roles within the CPA profession to the role of personal therapist. Prior to making this change in her professional life, Cheryl served as Director of Practical Experience with CPA Alberta. In the last few years, Cheryl had been seconded to CPA Canada to lead work on developing national strategies and approaches to the field of practical experience for CPA candidates. As of March 31st this year, her association with CPA Alberta and CPA Canada ended. She's now finishing up her practicum placement as a graduate intern therapist at Heart, Body, Mind, Psychological and Assessment Services in Calgary, and she's starting her own practice, Another Way Financial Therapy Services. In this episode of Uncommon Sense, I'll be talking with Cheryl about why and how she made such a dramatic career shift, how her CPA training is helping her in her new life as a therapist, and a bunch of other related matters. This is going to be a fascinating conversation, so let's get the ball rolling. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thanks, Gordon, for having me.
Well, thanks for coming in today. I know that many CPAs change career paths over the course of their working lives, but I would guess that few of them make the kind of fundamental change in direction that you've embarked on. So I'd like to start our discussion by asking you, Cheryl, how long had you been thinking about this change and what factors and forces led to you deciding to make the shift?
I think for me, psychology has always been something that I was really interested in. When I was in high school, we had the opportunity to take a university class, and I chose Intro to Psychology at the U of A. For various different reasons, I kind of didn't end up going in that direction, but I think the pandemic actually brought a lot of things into focus for me. I know for many people it was a really difficult time, but for me it was kind of a period of forced reflection that I'm really grateful for. And I realized then that I wanted to try and find a way to do things that were meaningful for people as well as for myself, and just decided to start exploring counseling, not really sure where it would lead. Like, I thought potentially I could just move into an HR role, but I am definitely, I would say that I'm glad I took that step, not knowing where it would end. In terms of actually making the shift, I got some really good advice from a trusted mentor who's actually, you might know, Ewan Ip, who is CEO of the Western School of Business, who helped me by saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So, try to find a way to pursue a new direction without totally abandoning everything that I know, which really influenced the program that I chose to enroll in and also the direction that I'm heading in now.
Was there ever a point where you said, oh my goodness, what have I done?
All the time. Yeah, still sometimes now. Yeah, it was a very marked shift from what I was used to and a totally different way of learning as well. It wasn't as structured as I'm used to from my previous education. And so, it was a really big change.
Once you made the decision to pursue the therapist career path, how did you get started? What sort of education and training were necessary?
My first step was to find a master's program where I could still work and complete the requirements that I needed to. And I wanted to find something that had an in-person component because, being able to be relational with people is an important part of this career. So those requirements made my list of programs very short, but I'm glad that I was able to find something that met my needs. In terms of additional trainings, that I've learned that training never stops as a therapist. There's so many different therapies and techniques that you can add to your practice at any time. So while nothing is necessarily prescribed, the possibilities are truly endless. I've taken some actually really cool trainings around trauma and finances specifically that have been really beneficial to my practice.
Are there things that happened during the pandemic that you're now seeing the effects of in clients that you're working with right now?
Absolutely. There's a lot of, one of the ways I've noticed it is I'm doing my capstone research on compulsive buying shopping behaviors. And that really skyrocketed during the pandemic because people were at home, they were alone and trying to soothe themselves in a bunch of different ways. And those coping mechanisms have followed people now into life as it is. And so definitely there are still ramifications from the pandemic that are showing up for people all the time.
Yeah, I think, the impacts of the pandemic, whether psychological or financial or socially, we're going to be seeing and feeling those for years to come, I suspect.
Absolutely.
Cheryl, your current title is Graduate Intern Therapist. Can you explain what that role is and what the next steps are in the process to become a fully certified therapist?
So right now my role is just like any other therapist. I work one-on-one with clients on issues that they are coming in to address. What's different is that I'm supervised by a registered psychologist who has 5 years experience, or I think she probably has 10, of post-certification experience. And I also have a practicum supervisor at my school that I can go to issues with. So my clients are getting a lot of different brains on their issues, which makes me feel a lot more confident in what I'm doing.
And how do clients find you? Do they look you up, or are they assigned to you, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's been a mix. The practice I'm at is quite busy, so often there's just a flow of people who are looking to see anyone. I offer low or no cost services, so that's a way to kind of differentiate myself a bit. And then also there's been a lot of word of mouth lately from people wanting to explore the relationship between their emotions and behaviors and their finances as well.
I understand that you use the EMDR therapeutic treatment in some of your work. Can you tell us what EMDR is and how you apply it in the service of clients?
Yeah, so EMDR it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a mouthful. It's an evidence-based treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, but I typically use it to target really challenging memories that have contributed to a belief about yourself that's causing difficulty in your life. So an example of that would be the belief that I'm not safe. And how that's affecting you now is that perhaps you're unable to spend because you're afraid you won't have enough. And that's causing friction in your relationships. And while the statement, I'm not safe, can sometimes seem really general, it's usually really reinforced by really specific events that have stuck with you over the years and are making you feel that that's still true for you, even though your circumstances may have changed. So what EMDR does is it uses the processes that our brain naturally goes through during REM sleep to work through these negative memories right during the therapy session, actually. So we do that by stimulating the left and right sides of the brain, either through eye movements, which you'll notice when someone's sleeping and they're dreaming, their eyes go back and forth. So we'll simulate that in the therapy room, or we'll use tactile stimulation, like alternating tapping right and left sides of your body to get the same effect. But yeah, I know it sounds odd. It was odd to me at first, even while I was taking the training. But after looking at the research and getting to use it with clients and seeing how effective it can be, it's really, I find, an impactful way to work with memories and beliefs that have been holding people back.
Do you explain to clients before you enter that process what you're going to be doing, or is it done without their knowledge?
Oh, no, definitely there's a consent piece to it. It's not for everyone. Some people aren't interested in that. Some people aren't suited for it. So if you're someone who has a pattern of dissociating sometimes when things get really hard, EMDR doesn't really work well in those situations. So we always do an assessment to see, number one, is someone interested? Number two, are they well suited for it? And is the issue that they're coming in for appropriate for EMDR?
Okay, that sounds really interesting. I hadn't heard of that before. Obviously, in much of your work, you combine financial management support with therapy, which indicates that there's a connection for many between financial matters and mental health. Am I correct about that? And if so, how do you approach therapy that incorporates financial management and issues into the process?
Financial stressors are huge, especially right now with the cost of living and all the uncertainty in the world. PwC actually did an employee financial wellness survey in 2023 where they found 57% of employees say finances are the leading source of their stress. So it's a big issue that I think more people are becoming aware of now. In terms of working with clients, I just generally try and get a sense of what the issue actually is that they're grappling with. So someone might come in because they're having trouble budgeting after a divorce and a change in their financial situation, but what's really going on is that they're struggling around that change in identity. So while there might be some homework to draft a budget, we'll usually spend the time in session talking about what emotionally is going on that's making sticking to a budget really hard, and how can we deal with those emotions to initiate a change in the behavior.
So in other words, like something like compulsive spending, that's not, that's an issue in itself, but it's also the symptom of something else in many cases.
Absolutely, yeah. So like someone who's compulsively spending might know that they're overspending and might know that it's causing, negative effects in their life, but are just unable to stop for various reasons because it's fulfilling another need that they're experiencing.
So when you work with clients and talk about that, is it a surprise to them to learn that the compulsive spending, just as a hypothetical example, is a symptom of something else? Or are they aware of that, do you think, to begin with?
A lot of people are aware and just don't know how to stop. I think when I talk about compulsive spending with people, I try to depathologize the behavior. Like, we're surrounded by consumer culture, social networking, and a bunch of signals, advertising a bunch of signals telling us to spend and that spending equals happiness. And so when we're talking about those issues, I just try to bring to light some of the factors that around them that are encouraging this behavior as well, and take some of the weight off of potentially the shame they feel about what they're doing.
You often hear, jokingly people refer to retail therapy, and it sounds like this is the kind of the more serious side of that lighthearted term.
For sure. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when I talk about compulsive spending, they're like, oh, I have that. And no, you might tend to soothe yourself by shopping. But for some people, it is a really significant issue that's impairing their functioning in life.
You use the term feeling your finances in your work. What does that phrase mean?
Honestly, I don't know if I put too much thought into that when I came up with it. I thought it sounded cool. But I think it's how I labeled kind of what I'm doing. But when I'm working with clients, my hope is that I can get them to a place where they feel both more confident in managing their finances and their financial behaviors, but also in advocating for themselves in discussions around finances, whether that's at work or at home.
So is your work with your new practice, Another Way Financial Therapy Services, is it restricted to financial therapy, or do you serve clients in other ways as well?
I definitely work with a range of issues. As a professional, I also attract people that have a similar background. And so a lot of stress and burnout concerns, relationship concerns, money issues often lead to interpersonal conflicts. And so I deal a lot with that. I've worked with a little bit of chronic pain, some boundary stuff. It's run the gamut, I guess. But as I move forward, I would like to kind of pick some areas to specialize in so I can develop a lot more competence in that.
Yeah, just listening to you speak, I'm beginning to realize people might come in for something connected to financial therapy, but it might lead to a very different set of issues and concerns that aren't necessarily directly related to finances.
Yeah, that often happens really fast. So that's, I think, where the therapist part has been really beneficial, is that I'm able to kind of go with them down into those areas and try and sort out what's going on for them, even though it might just have an indirect impact, I guess, on their initial concerns.
So combining money matters with psychological therapy seems to be a unique approach. At least had never been aware of it. Is this a concept that is widely used in the world of therapy, or are you perhaps carving out new territory in the field?
It's definitely an emerging area. So there's a financial therapy association in the States that I belong to, which is kind of leading the way in this work. So there's a group of people that are definitely interested in it. In doing research for my capstone project, I realized that I'm going to say this hopefully correctly, but oniomania, which is a compulsive urge to buy, was actually documented in literature from the late 1800s onwards. So there's been a lot of history with these behaviors. There just hasn't been a ton of focus on in a systematic and methodologically sound way on how to treat them. So that, I think, is just emerging now. There's more and more practitioners that are using the term financial therapy in their work. So I just always encourage people to really think about whether they're looking for financial advice or a therapist, as it can be quite confusing right now in the space, and to pick the person with the credential that more closely aligns with what they're looking for.
Well, other than compulsive spending, are there other types of financial issues that you provide therapeutic services for?
I've had clients that are really navigating the shift from caregiver to breadwinner. So, like, for example, someone who's getting a late in life divorce might be experiencing difficulties around that. I've also had it the other way, where somebody was used to making a lot of money and being the breadwinner in their family and having to shift now into parental leave and what that means for them. So those have been some issues. There's also people who are concerned with like their ability to not spend and how they're missing out on enjoying life because they feel like they can't. So there's definitely a range of issues.
Are there compulsive spenders? Are there also compulsive savers?
Yeah, I don't know if there's like the term
I'm not one
is
of
the
those,
same.
by the way.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know what the terminology is, like, because compulsive buying shopping is actually a kind of a recognized disorder, and I don't really know what's appropriate on the other side to describe it, but definitely there are people that kind of exhibit hoarding behaviors around money.
Oh, yeah, I can see that, yeah. I think I have some relatives like that. So. I can't think of many careers that seem more distant from accounting than being a therapist. Nonetheless, are there skills, attributes, characteristics you bring from your CPA training and experience that continue to serve you as a therapist?
There are so many. As an auditor, I learned how to put people at ease and ask good questions, which is really important as a therapist. And I think it's a skill that accountants don't really give themselves enough credit for. Another thing would be that most therapists in private practice are contractors, not employees. So it's really important that you're comfortable running your own business, which is something not everybody's prepared for. The CPA obviously prepared me really well for this, and so I don't even register some of the hurdles that people are experiencing right now, like trying to decide whether they should incorporate or not. So that's been great. I think one of the ways where it's been less obvious but still helpful is the CPA program really taught me the importance of making sure that I'm communicating to my audience in the right way. So in sessions, sometimes I'll draw things or use visuals for people that are struggling with auditory learning. Or I can send follow-up emails in plain language if we cover things like EMDR, which is a lot of information to throw at someone. Sometimes I try experiential exercises if that feels like a better way to connect. But I feel like the CPA program really hammered into me that you need to identify the user's needs and communicate in a way that's impactful for them, and that's my responsibility to do. I'm also extremely grateful for the ethics and professionalism that I'm able to demonstrate because of my experience. It affects the therapies I choose to learn, how I show up with clients, how I take notes, how I consult with colleagues. In all those situations, I'm using the skills that I learned as a CPA. It's just trying to now figure out what things like due care and competence look like in the psychology world as opposed to the accounting world.
Okay, well, that's an interesting list of skills and characteristics. I'm beginning to think every therapist should have a CPA designation because I can see where it would all come in as very important parts of your business and your day-to-day work. You mentioned the term experiential experience or something like that. Or can you explain what that means?
Experiential exercises. So
experiential exercises, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it helps to not just like tell someone how to do something, but to allow them to practice it. So whether that's practicing a conversation with a loved one that you're struggling to have, or doing a meditation together, or potentially if it's something that you're afraid of, like, can we imagine Yeah, if you're working with a phobia, can we imagine confronting that phobia rather than actually doing it in session?
I imagine that for a lot of people, there's a lot of shame and embarrassment associated with financial issues like compulsive spending or compulsive saving. Do you find that it's difficult for people to reach out at first? Are they usually in a pretty bad spot before they have the courage or the wherewithal to reach out for help? Or is it something that people are fairly comfortable talking about?
I think it depends. People are definitely interested, so I get a lot of inquiries just as to, people asking what is it? What is this? And what are you doing? But when we get into it, there is a lot of shame, like you said. Multiple people have told me that it's harder to talk about their finances than it is to talk about their sex life. And so that to me is like a real privilege that I get to hold, and that people are comfortable and willing to open up with me about something that is really close to their hearts.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's a privilege in a way to have people trust you to that level where they talk about something that can provoke such shame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for that. Looking back on your years in more conventional CPA roles, what would you say you learned about yourself from those experiences?
I learned that I actually really like novelty a lot. So I think people think that audit can be really repetitive, but that's not necessarily the case. My background was actually as an operational or performance auditor, and that was really great for me because I got to learn about a whole bunch of different industries and processes. Every audit, a lot of the times, was new, and so I really enjoyed that challenge. And I can see that now in the therapy room. It feels similar. It's like every client is new, and I get a lot of novelty that way. I also learned that I can do really hard things. So going through the CA program while working full-time was no small feat. And it gave me a lot of confidence that I could tackle this new challenge.
Which was more difficult, earning your CPA designation or earning this new therapist certification?
Oh, that's a good question. I think if I was the same age when I was doing both, it'd be easier to compare, but it definitely currently feels like more of a struggle because it's just such a different way of learning, and I'm at such a different point in my life where I'm trying to juggle all the things that come with midlife. But I definitely remember the fortitude I needed to complete the CPA program as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a grueling process from what I understand. Okay, so here's a future-focused question for you, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but do you intend to keep your CPA designation now that you've embarked on your career as a therapist?
I definitely do. Yeah, both from the work it took to get my designation and the time that I've spent working with the profession, it's really important to me. I also hope to stay connected to the accounting and finance community so that I can refer clients to trusted practitioners when things are out of scope for my work. And I also want to make sure that I'm up to date on, my level of financial literacy when those issues do come up in session.
What's involved in keeping your CPA designation? You have to do a certain amount of continuing education and so on, I imagine?
Yeah, there's, I think, the continuing education hours, the registration requirements, and there's an ethics component as well that I think is every 3 years.
Would you recommend the CPA designation to someone who's, like, say, in first year business at a university? Is it still a career path you think has a place in today's business world?
Yeah, without reservation. There's so many useful skills in the program and that you'll develop throughout working as a CPA that are extremely transferable. I also think people underestimate the interest and value in pursuing traditional accounting roles. Like those roles are, can be really interesting. They can be a really fruitful career. And I think more people should consider exploring it just for what it is as well.
Great. Just sticking with your future, what do you foresee for your career over the next 5 years or so? Have you set any specific goals for that time frame?
Right now, I'm just putting one foot in front of the other, I would say. So I don't have specific goals. The future is a little bit fuzzy, but I would love to grow my own practice into something that's thriving. I'd love to connect with other practitioners that want to work on the emotional and behavioral aspects of people's finances. So that would be a dream, but we'll see what happens. I'm very tired.
Another Way Financial Therapy Services, that's the name of your practice. How do you serve clients? Is it face-to-face or is a lot done over Teams or Zoom these days? How does that work?
Yeah, it's all virtual at the moment. I'm hoping to have a kind of physical location in Edmonton where I'll be able to see clients in the fall once I register with the College of Alberta Psychologists.
You could have clients from all over the world then, theoretically. Have you had clients from outside of Alberta or outside Canada even?
No, actually, because I'm working under a registered psychologist, I'm under their license and so can only see clients where they're licensed. And that'll be the same for me going forward. If I seek registration with the college, it would just be in Alberta unless I became an affiliate member with a different.
All right. So you couldn't have a client from Ontario unless you had a license in Ontario. Is that how it works?
Yeah. And I guess in this interim period, while I await registration, I am seeking licensure with the College of Registered Psychotherapists in Ontario, just so that I have a governing body in this little interim bit, because I think that's important for people to feel like someone's regulated and they have a place that they can raise issues to. So I guess for the short term, the next few months, I will be able to see clients in different jurisdictions, but in the fall, we'll likely just only be in Alberta.
Well, thanks for that, Cheryl. I think that's a good place for us to wrap up. And I want to thank you so much for being such an incredible guest for us today. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I wish you the best of luck with your practice and everything that happens to you in the future. I know you're, just based on what I know about you, I know your clients are going to be treated to a lot of compassion, intelligence, and humor from you when you work with them. So best wishes for continued success, and thanks again for speaking so openly with us today.
Thank you, Gordon. I really appreciate it.
The Uncommon Sense podcast is presented by the CPA Education Foundation and funded by the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center was created through a generous donation to the CPA Education Foundation by the late Brian Heshe. Brian was a distinguished Albertan, business leader, CPA, educator, and community builder. His generosity and commitment to education underpinned his good works across Alberta throughout his lifetime. The opinions expressed on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the CPA Education Foundation. We would like to acknowledge that the CPA Education Foundation offices are situated on the traditional Treaty 6 and Treaty 7 territories and Métis Nation homeland. The Foundation acknowledges that we reside on traditional and ancestral territories of many Indigenous, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Their histories and culture influence our community to this day. The CPA Education Foundation is committed to helping build a province where Indigenous people and their voices and experiences are heard, valued, respected, and celebrated. Technical and recording services for this podcast provided by Wolf Willow Studios in Edmonton. If you enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. If you have any comments on the podcast, write to us at cpaef@cpaalberta.ca. To learn more about the CPA Education Foundation and the Heshe CPA Knowledge Center, visit cpaalberta.ca/foundation. Thanks for listening.